Rivalries are a very funny thing. It's also interesting when you get a team that, especially in a big state or a very proud sports state, when you have a lower tier team, I shouldn't say lower tier team, a smaller university who may even have a lot of success in some sports, baseball being one of them. But this is not an LSU show. I just had to mention this. As a LSU fan, as someone who covers them as well, I think it's funny when you have smaller universities, even ones that I attended, that tell you what you can and can't do, and their fans threaten to do something to you if you wear that team's merchandise. Nevertheless, you're not going to do anything to me, and you didn't last year, so I thought I'd get that pettiness out of the way. We are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Blake Ruffino. This is Are You Serious Sports? Episode 5 of Around Your SEC is here. Excited about that. Got tons and tons to talk about today. A lot of early and big news happening today. So we'll talk a little bit about Mike Elko and the first-year expectations for him. What do we think he will do? Is Texas A&M better off now that Jimbo Fisher is out? They bring in Kalen. They have a massive portal haul, players leaving, players coming in. We will talk about that in year one for Mike Elko. Zach Arnett, the former Mississippi State head coach and defensive coordinator, is heading to Ole Miss. He is going to be an analyst at Ole Miss, so we'll touch on that. That was just reported moments ago, so we'll touch on that. I think it's a great hire if you're going to get him as an analyst in the SEC, and it's a little bit of a pettiness by Zach Arnett, who is a very petty guy. I remember last year on the SEC teleconference when we were on, and Zach Arnett was very petty every day, every time that an opposing team's media would ask him a question. He was not well liked, and so it's going to be interesting. Goes to a program that maybe there are some other coaches that are not well liked there as well. Speaking of Ole Miss, did Lane Kiffin and does Lane Kiffin want out of Oxford? This morning, very, very early in the wee mornings today, Chris Lowe from ESPN, who does a fantastic job, an outright fantastic job for ESPN, illustrated the transition with Alabama, with Nick Saban to Kalen DeBoer. Mike Norvell was in the fold for being the next head coach at Alabama. Fantastic read. An outright fantastic read over there at ESPN. I suggest any SEC fan to go over there and read it. I did this morning. Thought it was absolutely fantastic. One big thing there is that a lot of Florida State people did think, and officials did think, per Chris Lowe, that Mike Norvell might have been the next head coach of the Alabama Crimson Tide. He says at Florida State, Kalen DeBoer is their guy there. Now, we'll talk a little bit about Kalen DeBoer because he has a problem at quarterback, but not a bad one. So we'll touch on that as well. But I got to admit, man, Lane was not, and per Chris Lowe, Lane was not a candidate for the Alabama job, and their administration knew that Nick was thinking about retiring a year before that he did, and good on them and good on Nick for telling them that. I will just say, and at least for me, I think that when you have a coach that constantly, in Florida State, let me back up. Florida State, if Mike Norvell was going to go to Alabama, Lane Kiffin was going to be the lead target for Florida State. So this is 2 times in 2 years that you have Lane Kiffin potentially lining things up to leave Oxford. I'm going to be very interested to see that if that Florida Gator job opens up and Billy Napier is fired, I think that they got to go after Lane Kiffin. I think they will go after Lane Kiffin. If they don't go after Lane Kiffin, then they are a bag of idiots. I do wonder if Lane believes that being at Ole Miss if he can get over the hump there. And I do question that if this is his final test to see if he can and how much it takes to do that. We'll wrap the show with hashtag Ask Blake. We do got some Kalen DeBoer stuff we need to talk about out in T-Town, so we'll get to that here as well. Chris H says, that settles it. I'll be at the game. Yeah, so listen, I'm going to be very quick on this. I am not a political person. I am not a person that gets into politics, but when you have a council person's husband telling me that I can't go to a Southeastern baseball game wearing LSU gear, I can do whatever I want. And that you will harass people if you see them in LSU gear, I dare you. I dare you to do that. Councilwoman's husband goes stupid on people at LSU Southeastern baseball game. You know what's going to happen if you do that? LSU's not going to come back. By the way, there's a Southeastern grad on Jay Johnson's staff, I might add. Just throwing that out there. You might want to keep your mouth shut. I'm not playing this pettiness game. I'm not going to do it. So I'm like, for example, I'm wearing an Ohio State Buckeye shirt here today. In support of my good friend Sam Petito, known him my entire life. So I'm going to rep him. I'm a fan of him. I'm a friend of him. So yeah. Aaron Miller says, I'll hit you with it again tonight, but man, the visit list in BR is loaded this weekend. That it is. We will talk about that. Rick Cloetti says the SEC, it just means more. That it does. And look, I think it's big news today, and we'll touch on this. Zach Arnett heading to Oxford. Is there a situation where, like this rivalry gets even a little bit bitter, a little bit more bitter? I mean, you can't get any more toxic with the Egg Bowl than you are right now, and you're very toxic. It is very, very, very toxic, that rivalry. And adding Zach Arnett as an analyst is a big deal. So we'll lead the show off with that. Get to some Mike Elko first-year expectations as well. All right. This is Around Your SEC, Episode 5. Excited that you are here with us. Do us a favor by hitting the like and share to all those social media groups, share to all of those social media pages. You're watching us, listening to us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, notification bell, wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag, our good friends over at Home Field Apparel. Stay with us.
BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by Home Field Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan. Whatever it is, even Idaho, they have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code RuffinoJoe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO, Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
We're back.
All right. Let's get this thing rolling, y'all. Zach Arnett, former Mississippi State head coach, is being hired as an analyst in Oxford. I got to tell you, man, I love the pettiness of this move. There is not a more petty move that you will see in college sports more than former Mississippi State head coach Zach Arnett leaving his post, got fired after 1 year, was put in an impossible situation in Starkville, and is now heading to Ole Miss to be a defensive analyst. Look, I do believe that this is – look, let me start off with this. I don't think that Zach Arnett made any friends with how he did things in the media, how he treated the media. I don't think that he made any friends with some of the play calling and things that he allowed offensively, you know, going from as drastic as the air raid to trying to run the football, going under center, doing a lot of things that he did. I do believe that Zach Arnett was not ready for that moment, but he was put in a pretty impossible situation. When Mike Leach passed, you know, it was a sad day for college football and college football fans everywhere. There's no denying that. And Mike Leach was a pioneer, a pirate of college football and college athletics. He was one of the bigger faces in the sport. It was a tough thing to overcome in that situation for Zach Arnett. He was still the head coach of Mississippi State, though, and Lane Kiffin still hired him to be an analyst. I do think that it's a really good hire. Look, regardless of what you thought about Zach Arnett as a head coach, regardless of how he allowed Will Rogers and that offense to transition the way that he did, he's going to have nothing to do with offense. The only thing that he will have to do is how to stop offenses like Lane Kiffin. And to be honest with you, okay, I don't think that he was a bad DC, nor has he been a bad DC even in the SEC. I thought that his defenses played tough. I thought that they were very chaotic and aggressive at times on how they got to the quarterback. It got, you know, they had two linebackers. They're going to be NFL guys. They did a lot of things very, very well in Starkville under Zach Arnett defensively. It's a really good hire. But don't act like, though, that Lane Kiffin doesn't know what he's doing. The pettiness of this is absolutely amazing. Now, that rivalry, the Egg Bowl, is one of the more toxic rivalries. You could even say outside of maybe Ohio State, Michigan, Auburn, Alabama, Texas A&M, it is up there as one of the toughest, more bitter rivalries that you'll see. The good thing about this, too, is now you have Pete Golding, who has been in the SEC for a long time and is a great play caller, and so is Zach Arnett. You know, what's interesting about Ole Miss here and adding a guy like Zach Arnett, man, whether you like Lane Kiffin, love Lane Kiffin, or you hate him or despise him, whatever your feelings are about him, you got to give him a tip of the cap and what he has done this offseason on the defensive side of the ball. It is amazing some of the things that he's been able to pull off. Now, I think we did talk about Ole Miss a lot on Monday and our expectations for them. On paper, I think they are a 9-3, 10-2 team. They are extremely talented. The reason they're there is easily because what they did last year, winning 10 games in the regular season, guys, they got better. I mean, Quinshon Judkins leaving is a big deal. Don't get me wrong. But on the defensive side of things, they got better. They just got better again by adding a guy like Zach Arnett. So tip of the cap to Ole Miss, tip of the cap to Lane Kiffin. Now you have two guys that know what they're looking at defensively and how to stop things. I think it's a big-time hire. The only thing that I will say here is I do wonder how much, Pete Golding leans on him. Like was Pete a part of this? And I'm assuming he was. Did Lane talk to Pete about bringing in Zach Arnett as an analyst? quite honestly, guys, and just being real, I don't think you could hire a better analyst than a Zach Arnett type. You know, like it would be like a team bringing in Dana Holgerson as an analyst or Cliff Kingsbury as an analyst. Guys, you cannot, like, there's no analyst out there that has more experience of calling plays, even being a head coach, than guys like that. So good for them. I don't know how much better it makes them, but I do think it makes Pete Golding better from a play calling standpoint, which could make them more dangerous. So I would be interesting to see what you guys think about that. What are your thoughts on Zach Arnett being a part of that staff? It's going to be interesting. Rick says Lane is going to Lane. This is a classic Lane Kiffin move. I fully agree with Rick there. I mean, there is no more of a pettier coach than Lane Kiffin. And we're going to talk about Lane in a minute. Probably already should, because we're talking about Ole Miss right now. And we might do that. But the bottom line is, Lane has had a big-time offseason. And I don't think that you can deny him or them at this point. On paper, guys, they have had a better offseason, quite honestly. I could make the argument than anybody. Name a team, maybe Ohio State. The only other team that could rival Ole Miss on the offseason that they've had would be Ohio State, which, you know, you're looking at this right now. I mean, I'm wearing the shirt. Adding guys like Chip Kelly, Will Howard, adding a guy like Quinshon Judkins, and quite honestly, hiring a guy like Sam Petito there to be a director of player personnel. I mean, guys, they recruit. Ohio State recruits at a high level, but Sam Petito's last two stops was at Georgia and was at Alabama. I mean, you think that that dude doesn't know a lot about recruiting now? I would have wished he would have been in Baton Rouge. That's a whole different story, a whole different topic for a different day, but it's the truth. 1A, 1B on who had a better offseason. Pick your poison. Pick your poison. Because Ohio State hiring Chip Kelly as their OC, guys, it's a big deal. Bringing in Will Howard, Quinshon Judkins, the receivers and the young receivers, Jermaine Smith, I mean, already looking like the part and being a big-time receiver at Ohio State, it's a big deal. But Ole Miss is right there with them. Ole Miss is 1,000% right there with them. Like, Pete Golding probably should be a head coach in the SEC right now. Some off-the-field issues limited him from being that. And I just don't, Ohio State, as an example, they added big pieces on the field. No team, though, in my opinion, added better pieces from the portal more than Ole Miss. And it's interesting, and we probably should talk about this too. Is Lane Kiffin going to be there long enough to see this pan out? I mean, I don't know if you can make the argument that he is one of the best, if not the best, head coach in Ole Miss's history. I mean, you got Hemingway, and there's been a lot of good coaches at Ole Miss, but he's starting to get up there. He has another 10-win season. He gets to a playoff this year at Ole Miss. There's no telling what they could do there. I mean, guys, he's turned around the program. There's no denying that. Now, what is interesting, if we're going to talk about Ole Miss, is the Chris Lowe report from the day. Now, in case you missed it, let me give you some cliff notes on the ESPN and Chris Lowe's report from this morning. Now, buckle in, because I have been a conspiracy theorist. Some people have called me on this. Actually, it's just good sourcing. Listen to this. As I take a sip from the cup that everybody and their mama is looking for, literally on, this is my wife's, but she gave it to me for the show, so I appreciate her for doing that. Chris Lowe reported this morning that, and I don't even know if you want to say reported, but some of it is being reported from him, but he did an illustration on Nick Saban leaving Alabama and the domino effect that came behind it and what would have come behind it. Now, we obviously know what happened. Nick Saban told his administration about a year ago that he's thinking about stepping down and retiring. And that way that A.D. Bryan and Alabama and everybody in that circle could be on the lookout for the next head coach of Alabama. So they had a head start there. How that did not leak out, I do not know. But good on them for not leaking that part out. But in the Chris Lowe piece today, in the Chris Lowe reporting, it was interesting because he said that the only two coaches that Alabama really was going after, now stay with me here, was Kalen DeBoer at Washington. We obviously know that he was going to be the guy because he is the guy right now in Tuscaloosa. But it's interesting because the second guy that they were going after was Mike Norvell from Florida State. Now, in the report, Florida State officials, I'm assuming athletic department, boosters, whoever Chris Lowe talked to, there were a lot of people who thought that Mike Norvell was going to leave Florida State to be the next head coach at Alabama. Obviously, he stays. Florida State comes up with a really good contract extension. Jimmy Sexton pulling all the moves and moving all the strings like he's the godfather, like he's Don Corleone. Well, make him an offer they can't refuse. I mean, he pulling the strings. But the only two people that Alabama was going after was DeBoer and Norvell. What's interesting about this and where I want to talk about this on and where it goes back to Ole Miss is that Florida State officials were already preparing that if Mike Norvell left and went to Alabama, that they were going to go and do everything that they could to get Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin. Now, here's the interesting part about that. In the way that I think about it and knowing and covering coaching hires in the SEC, I would not be surprised nor shocked because everybody's got the same agent. Jimmy Sexton is the agent for everybody that was involved in this Alabama coaching search. This is 2 times in 2 years that Lane Kiffin's name has come up at big-time programs. Auburn last year, Florida State this one. What was the conversation like with Jimmy Sexton and Florida State officials that if Mike Norvell left, what conversation did they have with Sexton about going after Lane Kiffin? Because that would not have been released to Chris Lowe if Jimmy Sexton, Lane, and Florida State officials didn't have a conversation. Which brings me to my ultimate point here. I could be wrong, and this is strictly opinion. I think that the Florida Gators head coaching job is coming open. And we have seen Lane in back-to-back years and back-to-back seasons name fully being brought up at other places for being a head coach. Auburn, tons of people have reported and talked about this before they went after Hugh Freeze. That hire was on the doorstep of happening until some things late in the process, a report gets out, Lane Kiffin, it derails everything. You remember that story. I'm going to be very interested to see because I think the same thing that happened at Alabama, that their administration knew about a year before Nick Saban retired. I think that Florida is already preparing and probably already prepared and probably already talked to Jimmy Sexton about this, that they're probably going to fire Billy Napier if the season goes the way that they believe that it will. I think Lane Kiffin might be the next head coach, and I've been saying this for 2 months now on either this show, Ruffino and Joe show, or our national college football show. I fully believe Lane Kiffin is going to be the next head coach of the Florida Gators. Now, I could be wrong. Ole Miss could do everything they can to keep him. Maybe he does. Maybe they do, I should say. But when your name continuously comes up in these coaching searches, 9 times out of 10, that normally means that you want out. I don't care that Ole Miss has been able to put great contracts together for him. I don't care that they have been able to go out into the portal and bring in a lot of really good talent and recruits. Hell, we're going to talk about first-year expectations from Mike Elko in a minute. And he brought in arguably Mike Elko's best player that was on his roster when he got hired there, and Walter Nolan from the transfer portal. I don't know if the Florida Gators are serious enough and take this serious enough. I don't think that there's anything that Ole Miss can do from a money standpoint to keep Lane Kiffin. Because I think that the Gators are yearning for a winner. They are yearning to get back to the mountaintop that they've been on, and I think that Lane Kiffin is the guy to do it for them. I do think it's interesting, though, that Florida State was fully prepared that if Mike Norvell left, that they were going after and going to get Lane Kiffin. Do you know the rivalry that would brew in all of this? That if Mike Norvell stayed, like the chances, like Lane Kiffin could have been the next head coach of Florida State. But what if next year? What if in December? What if in December Lane Kiffin is in Gainesville as their next head coach? a year ago, you could have made the argument that he was going to be in Tallahassee. Chris Lowe reporting, and there's nobody. Let me say this about Chris Lowe. If you think that if I'm a conspiracy theorist behind all this, if you think that, Blake, you are completely talking out of your ass, then what dots am I supposed to put together in a Chris Lowe report from ESPN, who, guys, quite honestly, might be the most connected dude when it comes to big-time head coaches in the country? I know that Pete Thamel and all these other reporters that are national guys are highly connected too. Dog, if you think that Chris Lowe got all of that and is not more well connected than anybody in the sport, boy, oh boy. But domino pieces and coaching carousel, it is guys, it's a money driver. In my business, just as an example for all of you who maybe it's the first time that you're watching the show, coaching carousel brings people like me, a content creator, a sports guy, someone who does a show. Guys, we do 9 shows every week. 5 on AYS, 3 on Rafino and Joe show, and 2 now with the SEC. So that's 5, 3. So no, that's more than that. So 10 shows a week at minimum. Man, I do. Coaching carousels bring guys like me more money than anything else. I'll give you an example. When I was covering the Brian Kelly saga, or the Brian Kelly hiring at LSU when Ed Orgeron was fired, I'll be real with you. I've never made more money in my entire life than coaching carousel. Ever. Like, there's nothing that's ever happened that when a head coach is hired or fired or whatever it may be, nothing brings more money than that. And that's just the truth. The domino effect that happens when coaches get hired, fired, leave, go elsewhere, whatever, there's nothing bigger than that. Okay, let's get to a couple of your questions here as well. Chance Babin and Sports Bar both say that Ohio State had the better offseason. I don't disagree with that. I really don't, because you can say the personnel that they brought in, like Will Howard, Caleb Downs, Quinshon Judkins, those are three dudes that I think you could just end the conversation there. Like, I fully believe that you could probably end the conversation there. But what makes Ohio State having a better all season than Ole Miss is Chip Kelly. Like, it's not remotely close. I'm pretty sure that they've already started spring. Chip is running the offense. Ryan Day is out. I mean, like, look, the connection between Chip Kelly and Ryan Day is a magical one. They are really good friends, and Chip Kelly is coming here, who is the mentor of Ryan Day, and they're already starting and going fast and wanting to run up tempo. Like, Chip is happy as a lark right now. He said as much in his interview this morning as well with Ohio State. Guys, I'm happy as a lark. All I got to do is call plays and develop. That's all I want to do. Like, everything else, guys, I'm burnt out. Like, he didn't say this, and somewhat did in so many words. Guys, I'm burnt out. I want to call plays. I want to develop kids. This new day and age, I don't want it anymore. And good on him. And good on him for being honest. To be real with you, that ends it. Like that puts the icing on the cake. That ends it right there. As well. Anthony James says Texas A&M just after next year. Ole Miss sucks too. Can you expound on that, Anthony? What do you mean by that? Chance also says coaching carousel makes scum bag agents more money. I got to be real with you. I mean, Chance, let me ask you this: how do I want to say this? Is Jimmy Sexton really a scumbag? I mean, is he really a scumbag? I don't know if he is or he isn't. I don't know Jimmy Sexton, but he is the puppet master. When it comes to coaching carousel, he is a puppet master. He is Don Corleone. Don Corleone. Sorry, if it's your first time watching, sometimes we get some news via text. Got to make sure we don't have breaking news. Man, did y'all just hear my neck crack? Not good. Not good. Feels good when you get that out there. Chan says he kind of is. He floats out lies, forcing schools to renegotiate with someone who was never a candidate. Yeah, I mean, I understand what you mean by that, but that's his job, though, man. I mean, that's his job, though. I mean, if the school doesn't, what's the school going to do? I mean, the school's the one that is paying it. I mean, Mike Norvell got paid, and it was legitimate, like why he had to. I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, though. Brandon Graziano says, Dave better hope it works or he's out with the money spent this offseason. Yeah, and look, we're an SEC show, but I'll just mention that, or this is an SEC show, but we'll mention this. Look, I think it's national championship appearance for them or bust. It's national championship appearance for them or bust. And guys, I got to be real with you. I do think they're going to be in the Final Four. I don't think there's a team in their conference that can stop them. I don't know if there might be 4 teams that can stop them. Georgia, Texas, maybe Oregon, maybe. There's nobody in the Big 12. Maybe Florida State could do something. I'm not a fan. I don't want to say fan. I'm not sold on the DJU at quarterback thing. I mean, we'll see. All right, let's do this. Let me get to our good friends over at J&J Exterminating. First year expectations for Mike Elko, Texas A&M. We'll talk on that. And Kalen DeBoer. Does he have a massive problem in Tuscaloosa? We talk about that next. Stay with us.
Louisiana is unique. The food, the festivals, even the bugs. No, not mud bugs. Unwanted bugs like these. The ones you don't want crawling in your home or business. Trust the Shield from J&J Exterminating. We've been protecting Louisiana homes for over 50 years, earning the trust of our clients because we deliver what we promise. Protect your home from pests. Get the Shield from J&J Exterminating.
J&J Exterminating. Yeah.
J&J has protected Louisiana homes and businesses for over 60 years.
Call him today, make the pests go away. J&J Exterminating. Yeah.
All right. So we got some first-year expectations here for Texas A&M head coach Mike Elko, and also we need to talk about this Kalen DeBoer quarterback situation. I do think that he has a issue, but a good issue on his hands. Let's start with Texas A&M's Mike Elko. So last year, one of the biggest moves in the country happened, and probably the biggest story. Well, I don't want to say the biggest story because of Chip Kelly and a lot of other things that happened. But one of the bigger stories in the country in college football happened last year right here in the SEC. Texas A&M spent $75 million or will spend $75 million so that Jimbo Fisher no longer coaches in Aggieland. I know that the A&M fans don't like me a lot because I've said some crazy things, or they think I've said some crazy things in the past. But we're going to be real and talk about them on field and the realistic first-year expectations for Mike Elko at A&M. Look, instantly, I do think from where A&M was the last 2 years under Jimbo to what they will probably be in the first couple of years under Elko, I don't know how else to say this other than they're getting an upgrade. And a massive upgrade at that, because I do think that the game had passed by Jimbo. It's a lot like what happened and we've seen with guys like Les Miles, what we're seeing right now, even what some would believe out at Clemson with Dabo Swinney. Sometimes the game just passes you by, and Mike Elko comes in and wants to try to rebuild where A&M thinks that they're supposed to be. Now, what is the realistic truth about A&M as a whole, right? Meaning, we have a lot of, or let me say it like this. I do think that Texas A&M fans do believe that there is a pedestal or a place that they need to be when it comes to football. I don't agree with the pedestal that they think that they should be in. They think they're one of the top tier teams in the country. They think they're one of the top tier brands in the country. Where that might be a case as a brand, they're not one of the top 15 teams in the country right now. Let me explain. Since the BCS and playoff was enacted in 1998, Texas A&M only has 2 10-plus win seasons in that time frame. 1998, only 2 10-win seasons. Now, you could say those were coaching issues. You can say that there's a lot of different things that started there with them, and why they've only eclipsed 10 wins in a season only twice since 1998. What is the realistic nature, though, of what they've been since then? Look, they have been somewhat of, and unfortunately for them, they have been what some people believe as the little brother, okay, in the conference. They have not gotten into an SEC championship game. They did have one really good year under Jimbo, which was the COVID year. They had some good years with Johnny Manziel. But other than that, they have not lived up to what they think their standard is, even though realistically their standard is maybe just an 8-9 win team. Now, the goal here is obviously for Mike Elko to come in and change that narrative and change that perception that is reality around College Station. Listen, I do think for me that when I look at this team in College Station, they're going to be a much tougher team that people will give them credit for. You know, A&M right now, there's a lot of people that's quiet about them, not a lot of people talking about them because they don't really know what to expect. They know that they have a lot of good pieces. You bring in Mike Elko, who also brings in a really strong offensive coordinator in Colin Klein. He brings in a lot of defensive guys that he has known and has worked with. And quite honestly, Mike Elko is one hell of a play caller and a defensive mind. I do think instantly, from a coaching staff as a whole, they got better when Elko came in. Instantly. In today's society, in today's world, in today's college football, they have gotten better. I think Colin Klein is one of the better offensive coaches or offensive play callers in the country. Nobody knows about him, though, because he's at Kansas State or was at Kansas State. The ultimate question becomes is how do you now in this year with all the players and really talented players that have moved on, right? Like you've had guys like Walter Nolan leave and go to Ole Miss. You have Evan Stewart that leaves and goes to Oregon. You have a lot, LT Overton. Rakes is another guy that went to USC. They've had a lot of high caliber former 5-star guys that have left and have gone elsewhere. But guys, they've done really good in the portal as well. They bring in guys like Des Ricks, okay, from Alabama. Now, we got to see what Des Ricks is going to be. The former 5-star from Virginia was at Alabama last year, didn't play, took a red shirt, and now is going to Texas A&M. But look, they bring in a guy like Scooby Williams, who was a linebacker for Florida this past year, and I thought played really well. They bring in arguably the best edge rusher. Arguably, I don't know if he is, but arguably one of the best edge rushers in all of college football this year in Nick Scourton. You add guys like Cyrus Allen, the wide receiver from LA Tech, who I think is going to be a really good addition for them. They bring in Reed Adams, who's going to be a part of their interior offensive line, probably will start at left guard. They brought in a lot of good pieces. They got a lot of talent on this team too. And where you would probably think that they're going to take a step back on the defensive line, I'm not 1,000% sold that they do. Now, the depth that they had, yes, they 1,000% are going to take a step back from the depth that they had. But guys, this starting four that they'll have on this defensive line is nothing to nothing to. I look at them and say, like, hey man, don't underestimate them. Shamar Turner, Shamar Stewart, Nick Scourton. Guys, that's 3 bona fide NFL guys along your defensive line next year. Bona fide NFL dudes. They bring in Scooby Williams. They bring in guys like Des Ricks. There's other players that they brought in from the portal. Now, Jacoby Matthews is out at safety. You have Jordan Gilbert that's out at safety, but they bring some guys in. How will that secondary, that is the ultimate thing for me for Mike Elko in year one. How is that secondary going to perform? Because I got to admit, I don't know how far of a step back they take on defense, because I do think that Mike Elko is that good of a play caller. Now, the ultimate question becomes, in my opinion, how good can this offense be? Now, Connor Weigman returns. You have 3 really good running backs in Moss and Reuben Owens, or 2 really good backs coming back in Moss and Reuben Owens. You got a really good wide receiver in Moose Muhammad, who I thought is one of the more underrated guys in the SEC at that position. I just question, when you bring in a defensive guy, a defensive head coach in year one, just how bad or chaotic sometimes it can be along the offense. Now, the counterpart to that is they bring in Colin Klein, who I think can mask some things. But I look at A&M on the offensive side of the football. They bring back a lot of their offensive linemen. Trey Zahn is returning. They brought in, as we talked, Reed Adams, Bryce Foster at center, Cam Dewberry, and Chase Pasantis. All will be back and will be there. When you bring back your offensive line, who I don't think had a bad year last year. They were just inexperienced. Let's see where they'll go there. The biggest thing for me, and the storyline will be in all of this, is how far can Connor Weigman lead them? How far can he lead them to where they want to go? Because quarterback in college football is guys, it is one of the biggest things. If you have a really good or just really solid quarterback play, guys, you're going to win 8-9 games just like that, no matter what you're doing. I mean, look, you saw last year as an example, 2 quarterbacks that will probably be in the first 2 picks in the NFL draft, and Caleb Williams and Jay Daniels. Their defenses were horrendous, but they elevated the entire team by their play. I don't think that Connor Weigman has to do that. But what is the year one expectations? Now, I do Okay, look at Texas A&M's schedule and don't think that people have realized how tough this schedule can be and is in 2024. Let me pull this up. Hold on. I thought I had it up, but I don't. I look at their schedule. They start off the season with Notre Dame, okay, in South Bend or at Kyle Field, not in South Bend, but at Kyle Field and College Station. I don't think that they can win that. Like, I think Marcus Freeman, I think it's a very tough game one, even in your home, at your home place. I'm not 1,000% sold with Mike Denbrock as the new OC. By the way, they try to hire Mike Denbrock as their offensive coordinator. I'm just not sold that they can win that one. Now, that game is at home. I don't know what Marcus Freeman and the boys game plan for. I do think that game's going to be closer than people think. What in all realistic nature is Marcus Freeman supposed to break down? Right? Like, I mean, you have no idea what they're going to come out and do. But I do think that they lose to Notre Dame just based off of the simple nature that I think that Notre Dame is a more established or in a more established place right now. And I do think that they have more talent from top to bottom than them, especially along the defense. But look, they got McNeese. They go to Florida, which is not going to be easy. Anytime you go to Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, it's not easy, even though I do think they'll get the win there. Bowling Green, Arkansas, and Dallas. I think they beat Arkansas. But here comes, or after that game against Arkansas, here's where the hard or really tough slate comes. You got Missouri at home. You got Mississippi State on the road. LSU at South Carolina. You do play a little Rudy Poo in New Mexico State, but you go to Auburn. That's going to be a tough game. And then Texas to end the year. Guys, I see 8 wins here. And Kansas, I think they beat New Mexico. I think they could beat Auburn. I think they can beat South Carolina. I think they can beat Mississippi State. I think they're going to beat Arkansas. I think they're going to beat Bowling Green, Florida, and McNeese. That's 8 wins. I think they lose to Notre Dame. I think they lose to LSU. I think they lose to Missouri. I think they lose to Texas. I don't know if that's not a solid year one under Mike Elko. I really don't. I think that would be a solid year of what they should strive to. Again, I started all of this off by saying that what is the realistic expectations for A&M as a program? The realistic expectations for them as a program probably is 8-4. Because, again, since the BCS and playoff has started, you have underachieved, massively underachieved to your expectations. But your expectations to their reality is not the same. If Mike Elko goes 8-4 next year, goes into a bowl game, maybe wins it, gets to 9 wins, that is successful. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be very, very, very interesting. Okay. What do you guys think about A&M? What is your expectations for Mike Elko in year one? I just think 8-4 is so realistic for him, right? Like I do. And I don't think that's a shot at Elko. I think that, if I would have came out here and said, oh, they're going to be 6-6. They're not going to be 6-6, man. Get out of here with that. Get out of here with that. Brandon Reese says, I don't see Elko having that much more on-field success than Fisher. I'm gonna actually push back on that a little bit. Guys, Jimbo was so bad the last 2 years, play calling wise, offensively. Like, here's the truth. I could make the argument last year that they should have beaten Bama. Let me pull up there. Let me just for reference, that way that I remember this. Google Texas A&M record 2023. Let me go back and let's re-look at this. So they went 7-6 a year ago. They beat New Mexico. They lost to Miami. Okay. That game was so bad for them defensively. They let freaking Tyler Van Dyke, who's now at Wisconsin, throw it all over him. God, that was such a horrible loss. Let's say they beat ULM, so they're 2-1, beat Auburn, beat Arkansas. Okay, they lose to Alabama. So here's the thing that I think about this. Think about this. That team lost to number 11 Alabama 26-20. That was Jimbo's fault. 1,000% they lost because of Jimbo Fisher's mismanagement. I honestly don't think that Mike Elko has as bad of mismanagement or play mismanagement, clock mismanagement. Like Jimbo should have won that game. He lost that game for them. They should have beaten Bama at home last year, like without a question. They had the talent on defense to do it. They just could not get over the hump. The following week, they play Tennessee, lose by 7. Jimbo Fisher again. Mismanaging clock, mismanaging play calling. Like, they lose to Ole Miss by 3, which was the dagger for Jimbo Fisher. They lose 38-35. I remember watching that game. I mean, they beat South Carolina last year too. That was the dagger. Because Jimbo was 5-3. If he beats Ole Miss, he beats Mississippi State, then he's 7-3. He beats Abilene Christian, he would have been 8-3, and then he'd go on to LSU and see if he can get to 9 wins. And I think that they would have taken that. I 100% believe that if he would have won and won 9 games, he would not have been fired. I just don't think that Elko mismanages things like that. And I think that they got talent around a lot of places. I think their D-line is highly underrated. Now, they don't have the depth that they once did. I think they got some really good receivers, a good quarterback. I like Weigman. Their running back core is really good. They're going to spread it out. Guys, instantly overnight, they got better offensive play calling. Overnight. And it came out because who's your boy, Bobby Petrino, said Jimbo kind of hamstrung him a little bit. No shit. No shit. He did. Van Bennett, what's up? He says, I think that Elko is a step above Jimbo, but I believe that they may have a weakness at quarterback. I can see them with 8 wins. Weigman was not that bad last year, man. Before he got hurt, he was not that bad. In a year 1 as a starter, Connor Weigman stats. He was not bad. I mean, he threw a couple of picks. Remember, before he got hurt, people were actually putting him in the Heisman conversation. He completed 69% of his passes for 979 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks. Those 2 picks coming against Miami, who, by the way, can I tell y'all something? Which Miami is my sleeper team this year, by the way. Throwing that out there. Hot take. I think Miami is the team that I think that people are going to write off, but will somewhat come out of nowhere and win some games. They got so much talent in Miami, man. So much talent in Miami. I mean, I don't think he's as bad as people think. All right. Speaking of quarterbacks, before we get out of here, and we got 305 people in this thing. 305 people in the stream here. Y'all better do us a favor. If you haven't done so, if you're on Twitter, hit that retweet button. If you're on Facebook, like, share, all of that stuff. We appreciate y'all for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. We greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate y'all joining us. 179 of y'all on Twitter right now. Do us a favor by hitting the like and share. Okay. Let me wrap up this before we get to Ask Blake. So you have thoughts, questions, concerns. So bring them in here. Thoughts, questions, concerns. Throw them inside of the chat here, and we'll get to them to round it out. I do think Kalen DeBoer has a big-time problem on his hands. Alabama's new head coach, no. Nick Saban's not there. We talked about this earlier. Chris Lowe with the storyline, the hell of a storyline this morning and the story that he broke about the new head coach, Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, Nick Saban going out. I highly suggest that all of y'all go and read that. I do think Kalen DeBoer's got a very big problem on his hands, but it's a good problem. Very, very good problem. Who's going to be their quarterback? Who's going to win this job coming out of spring? Now, you got Jalen Milroe, who led you to a playoff last year. And quite honestly, man, I mean, listen, that defense was very impressive in Tuscaloosa a year ago, which ultimately is what led them to the playoff. But you have a playoff-going quarterback that is still there. Apparently, I was told that he has graduated, so it could be a grad transfer. So no matter what, he can transfer after spring, even if it's not in the portal date. But you have Jalen Milroe. You have guys like Ty Simpson, Dylan Lonergan that is there, and Austin Mack, who you brought in. I got to be real with you. I just don't see a scenario where Jalen Milroe is the starting quarterback game one. Kalen DeBoer is an air raid offensive guy. Now, maybe I am wrong here in saying this because maybe DeBoer molds his offensive play calling more towards what Jalen Milroe can do. I think what the offense that Kalen DeBoer is going to call and want to run fits into a system more for Ty Simpson and Dylan Lonergan and Austin Mack. I do think that even though it's unfortunate, this coaching hire with DeBoer hurt Jalen Milroe more than anybody on that team, mainly due to the fact that I just don't see Jalen Milroe coming out and throwing the ball all over the place like Michael Penix has done the last 2 years. I see a guy like Austin Mack, Dylan Lonergan, and Ty Simpson doing that. Somebody, if not two of them, is going to hit the portal. I don't see a world where they go into the season next year with all four of those guys. Now, the likely scenario is here that Ty Simpson, and Jalen Milroe, if they don't win the job, they're going to be looking elsewhere because why not? I mean, man, listen. I mean, those guys I'm assuming, are not going to want to sit the bench. They're going to want to play. They're going to want to start, especially Ty Simpson, who has not been able to do that but once in his career. What does Alabama look like if a guy like Dylan Lonergan, a first-year starter, or Austin Mack wins this job? Now, I don't think either one of them, we have not seen enough for them. I don't know if either one of those guys are ready. What is the realistic expectation for Alabama if one of those two guys is your starting quarterback? Do you tell Jalen Milroe that he is going to be the starting quarterback so that you do, for depth purposes and experience purposes, you have him there and then he won't transfer? It's going of all the quarterback battles in the SEC, I don't know if there's a more intriguing one than in Tuscaloosa. Because you know everywhere else who's going to be the guy. Connor Weigman at A&M. You know who the quarterback's going to be at Texas. You know who the quarterback's going to be at Oklahoma. You know who the quarterback's going to be at Arkansas. They bring in a transfer from Boise. LSU, both state schools, or Mississippi State schools, you know who the guy's going to be. Auburn has not done anything yet at quarterback. Looks like they're going to run it with Peyton Thorne again. Name a more intriguing quarterback battle than this one. I do think it's a problem that Kalen DeBoer is going to have to figure out. And I do think that they have done – look, Kalen DeBoer has already done some shitty things at Alabama, like bringing in Ryan Grubb, even though Ryan Grubb was going to be staying in Seattle and being the offensive coordinator for the Seahawks, so that they could go through that 30-day portal window and more guys wouldn't hit the portal.
You mean to tell me that Kalen DeBoer wouldn't tell Jalen Milroe that he's going to be the guy, he's going to be the starter, so that they have better depth and experience, that if Austin Mack or Dylan Lonergan have issues that they can't throw him in there, he 1,000% will do it. Jalen Milroe is not built for this system. He is just not. And unless he makes magical changes, I'm talking about if Kalen DeBoer goes in there and like we see a completely different dude, it's not going to work for him. Now, I'll give him this. I'll give Milroe this. He likes to throw it deep, and Kalen DeBoer can scheme some things up for him to do that. But if Jalen Milroe is the guy, that he's got a long, long way to go to fit into the system. Okay. Scott Landry says, what about LSU? What about LSU, my man? Look up top. This is episode 5 of Around Your SEC. Actually, LSU, believe it or not, because we talk about them every day on AYS at night at 7. LSU is actually one of the only teams we haven't talked about on this show, on this platform. Now, if I really wanted views and to get things rolling for Around Your SEC, I'd talk LSU. But that is deliberate. That is 1,000% deliberate. Mike Collins says, hey, Blake, what's up, man? Cowboys going to win the Super Bowl next year. Remember, you heard it here first. Go Tigers. No. Brandon Ray says, if Bama loses about 4 games this upcoming season, fans will lose their mind. I completely agree with him. All right. Everybody do us a favor. Like, share to all those groups and social media pages. We'll see y'all tonight after the LSU baseball and basketball game. We'll do that post-game show. Until then, we'll see y'all soon. Y'all have a good day. Peace.